Hello, and welcome to our CMORoom Spotlight. I'm Andrea Orth, Executive Director of CMORoom. At CMORoom, we bring together senior marketing leaders through curated dinners, thought leadership workshops, and conversations that spark real connection and fresh ideas. This Spotlight series is an extension of that mission, shining a light on the people shaping the future of marketing. Each episode will hear candid stories, industry insights, and advice from the leaders at the forefront of our community. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Whitney Magnuson. Thank you for joining us. Whitney's with Zoom. Why don't you please start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at Zoom?
Yeah, so I'm head of brand strategy and activation at Zoom. It's a fairly new role. I've been there just under 6 months at this point. Really loving it. This is a return to the tech industry for me. I've held previous marketing roles in finance at Northwestern Mutual, in travel and hospitality at Hilton, and then before that was back in the tech world. And before all of that started, I also had stints as an entrepreneur. I'm actually the former founder of the National Karaoke League and as an attorney. So I either have varied interests or I get bored and change direction too often. But either way, I don't have the traditional career path.
So, thinking about that career path, think back about all these different experiences that have built up to what you're doing at Zoom. How have they really shaped your perspective on activation driven brand leadership?
Yeah, I think that the best marketers, and especially the best brand marketers, have a real diversity of interests. So whether that comes from working in different industries or just having hobbies that are completely outside of their professional realm, I think being able to pull from those varied experiences in their lives and then infuse them into their brands. If you like something, someone in your audience is going to like that thing too. And so that gives you just a real opportunity to drive new life and growth to what you're doing.
So, you kind of dropped in an attorney. And tell us a little bit about that. You just kind of dropped that there and didn't really say
Yeah,
much more, but give me a little bit more about how kind of your path has led you
sure.
to these marketing roles, but kind of coming from this entrepreneurship and being actually an attorney.
Yeah.
How is that kind of shaping now what you're doing in marketing?
Yeah, so I went to law school and graduated law school in 2009, which was, right after the crash of '08. And at that time, a lot of the big law jobs actually had deferred a year already, the people they were accepting. So it became evident quickly that perhaps the big law path was not as likely to happen. And so I fell back on what I knew, which before law school I'd been in public relations. So I was doing consulting work on the side. I was picking up contract work here and there, and kind of going down those different paths. And I remember a conversation with my father. Social media was exploding really around that time, and I said, I think I want to be a community manager. And he said, what, like for an apartment? And I said, no, for social media sites. Like you can do this for companies. He goes, no one is ever going to pay you to do that. So I like to tease my dad about that now. But, I think having those skill sets from different areas, whether it's entrepreneurship or law, has just helped me to forge better relationships in my company. So a great example is when I was at Northwestern Mutual, being a regulated industry, every single piece of content we put out, every single piece of social media copy, it all had to go through legal and compliance review. And I was able to translate to our attorneys, why are we making decisions that we're making to help us get on a path to yes, where it may have, without that context, been much harder for them to approve. So I think just finding those areas to connect it back in has been really helpful for me.
Yeah. And now tell me about, I know you're fairly new to the role, but tell me a little bit more about what you're doing for Zoom and, what that future of that role and what, you're really excited about in that role.
Yeah. So, head of brand under my umbrella includes brand marketing, social media, strategic events, and medium partnerships. And so, we are really going full force. We like to talk about the speed of Zoom, and it is fast, let me tell you. So, since starting, some of the things that we've really been focused on, we actually just wrapped our big annual user conference. That's Zoomtopia. Encourage everyone to go and watch the replays. So that was a huge kind of first milestone. Also working on some really exciting campaigns. But Zoom is also in the middle of a transition. I think everyone knows Zoom as the pandemic darling, or depending on your opinion, the pandemic evil. But they see that as the point where the company really became a verb in people's minds and kind of took on this um, unanimity across like every space. And since then, we've returned to what I would call normal company growth, and that has required a reset of how we think about marketing. Because at Zoom, we have both our enterprise function, where we have, the traditional B2B buying motion, but there's also solopreneurs and SMBs, and even just people who want to use Zoom for their hobbies, who can go through the e-commerce platform on the website and buy that way. So for us at Zoom, it's really a recognition that this is not just a B2B focus anymore. It's really bridging that gap between B2C and B2B at the same time.
Very interesting, with all these kind of immersive experiences, virtual events, kind of just all these different hybrid scenarios. Zoom seems to be playing like a really big part in that. Like you said, yes, I feel like people do just use it as a verb.
Mhm.
Let's all get on Zoom, even if it's another
Yeah.
platform. But so, thinking about that and thinking about the future of Zoom, how are you staying ahead and of kind of the other platforms out there and your competitors to provide more meaningful experiences for the future as well, now that we're really kind of post pandemic?
Yeah. Customers are really at the center of everything that we do at Zoom. And one thing that a lot of people may not yet realize is how we've expanded beyond just a meetings platform over the past several years. We now have products that target CX, our contact center, and virtual assistant tools, for example, are incredibly highly rated in the CX space. We have tools for marketers, including webinars and events. We have tools for sellers, Zoom Revenue Accelerator. So, really focusing on the value that we can bring to customers. And all of those products started out of feedback that we got from our customers of our collaboration suite to be able to say, hey, this is also a challenge that I'm having. And we enjoy the experience with Zoom. We know when we're on Zoom, it's going to work. It's going to be a high quality experience. It's going to be intuitive for our users to communicate with us. Do you also have a solution in this other space? And so, Zoom, we have an internal Zoom chat channel called the Voice of the Customer. And we literally every day are putting social media comments, emails that we get, things directly from our customers into that company-wide chat so that everyone at the company can stay focused on innovating in a way that's meaningful for our users.
So that's really interesting, like just the forward thinking and planning for what business is going to look like, or even like you said, a lot of things that may be B2B and B2C. I know that you've done some standout brand activations. You're coming off of, you mentioned it very quickly, Zoomtopia. What was the campaign? What were the objectives? What was the business outcomes that you were hoping to achieve at such a large event like Zoomtopia?
Yeah. So Zoomtopia is our annual tentpole event. And it's a challenge in that it means a lot of different things to a lot of different audiences, right? We're talking both to our enterprise customers, we're talking to casual end users, we're talking to small business owners and solopreneurs. And so finding that balance between creating a narrative that works for all is one of the big challenges that we had there. I think the other piece of it is how did we want to bring that event to life in terms of, is it in person, is it virtual, is it hybrid? And we really felt that it was important, being that we have such an amazing meetings, events, and webinars, those tools together, to be able to show Zoom for Zoom and how we're using our own tools. So we started that planning process in Zoom meetings, on Zoom whiteboards, using all of our Zoom chat tools to plan and execute that concept, and then brought it to life using Zoom events. And it was my first time actually using a doing a live streamed broadcast. And I have so much respect for the cast of Saturday Night Live now, because it's so stressful, right? But I think that with so many companies now, really limiting travel budgets and things like that, if you're a company and you're not offering that hybrid option that includes that virtual component and making that virtual component as good as your in-person experience, then you're just going to lose so many more people that you could be reaching in those events. So those were kind of some of the challenges. And we ended up framing around a narrative that Zoomtopia, the theme was going to be for the people. It was really about how Zoom centers their customers in everything we do and how we want to make it a great experience for every single user of the product, whether they're an IT decision maker all the way down to someone just starting their career or using it casually for a hobby. We wanted to highlight all of the different uses of Zoom across that product. So that's what guided us. And it was an amazing event. We had leaders from all different industries that came to speak. It was also on my birthday, and I got to meet John Batiste, and that was like amazing. So, a very cool moment for me personally.
Definitely very cool. So you talked about also underneath your purview, and I know a lot of your background has been in social media and also, maybe influencer.
hmm
You know, um, how are kind of is that experience in that background and strategies you learned in the past? How is that kind of helping to build relevance for Zoom into the future?
Yeah. So, I did. I have journeyed through social media as it kind of started and then as it's evolved. And I see the power there. And one thing that's really interesting with where I am in my career is a lot of the folks that were also kind of at the start of social media, they're now entering these, VP or senior executive CMO level roles. And I think it's such a great background for that position because it trains you in a few different ways. One is being able to intake and synthesize a lot of information really, really quickly and just distill it down to, okay, what are the themes here? What are the insights that matter out of this? Secondly, I think it trains you on how to stay close to what's happening in culture, what's happening in the market, what are your competitors doing in a way that you can make sure that your strategy that you're putting into place is always relevant. So at Zoom, with social media, we are really investing in the team there. We're taking a refreshed approach to the content that we're putting out on social because social continues to change and evolve. And it's important for companies to evolve with it.
I love that. I love what you said about, really it is a lot of the executives and people moving into the higher levels of marketing leadership have started out in that social seat and started out kind of bringing social up. I heard, it's not the first time I heard this, but I hear a lot of chatter now about how if you can't get a creative brief into a text message, it's too long.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's interesting, and I think that might be something that's coming from the social world. Like, we
hmm
don't have the attention, and also we have just that short little bit of time to get something across, so that brief better be really, really, on point and
Such
simple.
It's such a great point, Andrea. And I feel like, I've worked at companies across a lot of different industries, and I have only once in my career ever received brief writing training. And I feel like it's such an undervalued skill that marketers as a whole, like one of the best things marketing leaders could really do for their teams is invest in training them in how to write an excellent brief and how to provide really, really solid creative feedback. Everyone's working so fast, it can be hard to kind of invest in those things, but it's a skill that I think is getting lost, especially as more and more people don't maybe have agency experience the way that they used to.
Right. And yes, I do come from a background from agency, and we had to write a lot of briefs and had to really do a lot of that training, which really helped because, I was answering to the creative team that was like, what's the one thing you want to communicate? What's the one thing? It was always, let's get it down to just that one thing. So, thinking about, okay, we've got these leaders who are now CMOs, think about like what this next generation now coming up through marketing and growing into kind of our future leaders. What kind of core philosophies would you share with any aspiring marketing leaders, about kind of driving growth, maybe just in general, but also you've been at a lot of high tech companies. If they're interested there, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, you see these kind of pendulum swings in marketing, and it takes a while before you've been in them enough to realize that you're swinging. I feel like right now, we're in a swing where things had gone very heavily to the performance marketing side of the wheelhouse, and we're starting to swing back to brand. And as a brand marketer, I'm thrilled by that. But I think that just knowing that there are likely to be these types of shifts throughout your career. And so the more varied and cross functional you can learn and train and develop, even if it's just a matter of going and asking someone from a different area of marketing to go get coffee with you once a month or something, trying to stay kind of understanding what they're doing just makes you a better marketer at the end of the day. So one is that relationship building aspect and varying what you're specializing in. From a tools and technology perspective, I think that is, AI is changing the way we all work across every industry. And I think marketing is definitely a big part of that. I would say for anyone that's, kind of currently coming up through the ranks, figure out how to make AI tools work for you instead of the other way around, right? They should be adding to your process. They should not be replacing your process. They should be helping you become more efficient, not just creating one more box you have to check as you're trying to get something out the door. And right now there's a ton of different AI tools to use. Not all of them are going to be right for everyone. So for me, AI Companion on Zoom is of course my favorite. But, I think it's just a matter of figuring out what works for you and then putting it into place in a way that is helpful.
Yeah, I think I heard also that, and I've been experimenting with AI a ton lately. I just, I think it's a great tool to support and to help get some certain things done. I also look at it as like maybe an idea starter, and then you can kind of, take it and massage it and make it right. But something I always hear too about it is it's only as good as the inputs you put into it. It's only as good as the you asking the right questions of it. And I think that is really the future, but it's not something that you can just rely on, just to use all the time. So, thinking also just about engagement and that being like you said, that pendulum is swinging, and we went from all this performance marketing and then coming back a little bit more to brand, and still knowing that we have to kind of be someplace in the
Right.
middle. Meaningful engagement is important, not just the vanity metrics,
Mhm.
but like, are there other measurement frameworks and success criteria that you look to ensure that you're getting that impact either in your current role or in previous roles? What are those key things that you're looking for?
Yeah. I will say, I think we are on a measurement journey at Zoom, as many companies are, right? I think it's so common. I hear from so many of my peers what that transition from like a last touch attribution to now an MMM or MTA model looks like. And those are challenging transitions to go through. And one thing I've noticed, I don't feel like anyone is like 100% loving their model. So I think it's just understanding that maybe no model is always going to be right all of the time and understanding the trade-offs between them. I think one of the really interesting things about the shift to brand that we're seeing now is how much AI is impacting that shift, right? You're seeing people moving out of search, which was the bread and butter of performance marketing for so long, into generative AI models to ask questions. And so what you're putting into your content, what you're putting into your press releases, what you're putting into your social media channels, what you're doing with analysts, those become so much of a heightened importance. And in and of themselves, none of the models will reflect that shift unless you change your model to address that. And so I think it's just knowing as a marketer, yes, we can put models in place, but those models often also have to change and evolve over time as the market shifts, as our company shifts, and as our customers shift.
Yeah, really smart there. Um, Looking forward, next 3 to 5 years, we've got lots of shifts and emerging technology. What really excites you most for just the future of marketing and these emerging technologies, but really on what you think you might be using at Zoom to really kind of bring it forward. We're talking a lot about AI, hybrid experiences. Are there any
Mhm.
integrations?
Yeah, right now, one of the biggest trends that we're seeing is as a reaction to kind of the proliferation of AI slop in the market. People are craving experiences that they know are real, that are curated for them, and that they can trust. And so when it comes to a brand, building that equity with your consumers, with how you're putting content into market, we're seeing a real return to events, in-person events, experiential marketing, just being so important as people wanting to touch and feel and experience things themselves so that they know that it is actually, something created by other humans. So that's one big trend that we're seeing, and Zoom hopes to be at the forefront of that via our meetings, events, and then webinars, tools that we have to help teams plan for those events and create virtual experiences to mimic the in-person experience that's really meaningful.
Very good. Yeah, I know. You think about like this current generation, and there is just this craving from them about just like being actually not so much on their phones, to be actually in person, seeing their friends, doing something. Whereas like the previous generation was much more, I think, happy to be on their phones and on their computers and playing video games. It's an interesting kind of evolution that we're seeing. So we'll see how that kind of affects. So, last question. Reflecting on your career evolution, law, entrepreneurship, global brand leadership, what advice would you leave for this next generation, or this next generation of really CMOs that are, kind of coming up in the navigation that they're going to have to do with this digital first, expectation rich marketing world?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, just recognizing that we're all people, right? And so be kind to your teams, understand what they're doing, learn about what people that are outside of your individual workflows are doing. I think that's always good advice, kind of no matter what area you're in. I always like to say, schedule one meeting a month with someone that scares you. And for me, the way I do that is I literally block off a morning coffee, just breakfast time on my calendar, and I email people on LinkedIn and I say, "Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I just want to pick your brain." And you would be surprised at how many people say, "Oh, okay." They might think I'm weird, but they they say yes anyway. And I think that helps you to keep your eyes open outside of your own industry, see past any blind spots that you may have. One of the phrases I hate to hear in marketing is, "But we've always done it that way," right? Like that's screaming, "Oh, this is a moment to innovate." And so, absolutely. So I think just continuing to build your network and learn from people outside of your immediate kind of day to day. That would be my number one piece of advice. I think the rest will kind of come naturally.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I have found over the years, and maybe because I'm in marketing, I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like marketers are always willing to talk and always share and, help, give advice and, help grow the next generation.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, we were all there once.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Whitney, this has been wonderful.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much for
Andrea.
joining
It's
me. It's been
wonderful.
great to have you here. And guess what? You're our first guest on our video
Very exciting.
spotlight series. So thanks for
I
being
hope
our
you
guinea pig.
Did you proud?
Thanks so much.
Thanks.